Hello and welcome back to the Alliance of Independent Authors Indie Author Translation Rights Programme. Today is session 4, so welcome everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to be here.
We are running today's session a little bit differently, although it may say Orna Ross. I am clearly not Orna Ross. So Sasha Black is hosting today. Thank you everybody for being kind to me. We are going to run a little check-in with everybody and then do a Q&A at the end of the session. So I have sent you all 3 preset questions. So if we perhaps take each question in turn and go through our authors and see how you're doing, and then we will do the Q&A after. We'll start with Joe. So question number 1 is, what's been your biggest challenge to date?
So far, I think there's been 2 challenges really, but I think the main one has been trying to find the publishers, stroke agents that deal with my kind of genre, which is basically travel memoir. It is quite nichey. I've been checking out other authors, and I've got a fair list, but I don't know how good that list is. It's I've got a main list of about 12, preliminary list of about another 20, but it's kind of knowing if I'm really on track, on target with these kind of publishers. I think because it is a niche kind of genre.
Dakota?
So for me, it's similar, in a similar vein. Part of it is just that we're very data driven, and so a lot of people are less inclined to show what they're really looking for, and they more just kind of select from all of the available options. So kind of knowing who to reach out to and what we should actually be doing, what we should be putting down in our cold calls to them can be a little challenging. That's something I wanted to talk about today, is what should we actually be saying to people when we do these cold calls, reaching out, because we do have some that we are interested in discussing with, but we want to come off as professional and someone who's bargaining from a place of strength and not someone who's kind of just desperate to see their book out there.
And Michael and Judith, I was trying to take some notes there so I don't forget the questions, but Michael and Judith, do you want to pick up any challenges that you've been facing?
Judith Anderley, Chief Commercial Officer for LMBPN. We just recently came out of a conference, the 20 Books to 50K conference in Las Vegas. And so during that conference, I was able to present to a group of authors who had several questions. And so for us in particular, we spent a lot of the time prepping for the conference and post-conference, decompressing and following up. And so I think that just for our company, a challenge has been to maintain the conversation with the individuals that we met at Frankfurt, and with China. You know, I don't want to say that it's a challenge, because frankly, in China, it's a 10-year, 20-year play. So I think it's just par for the course, you know, where it's a continuation of hello, and conversation. As far as what I heard at the conference, I think to Dakota's point, a lot of individuals are seeking guidance as to who to reach out to and how to reach out to them. But overall, I think the continuation of the conversations has been a challenge for us.
And then I'm going to take it from the fact that we've built translations within our own company as well. So on the German side, we have seen success. It took us about a year, and then we had an effectiveness jump, if you will, in being able to translate quicker. And so now, last year, we were releasing a book every 6 to 8 weeks. But then what would happen is, let's say something happened in the town where our translator was, which actually did happen. One of those huge waves hit the town and messed it up. So that, you know, throws things off, as they have to figure out their lives. So we want them to certainly, you know, make sure that they're safe. So then we also have new books coming on, and so you have financial aspects of it that you want to make sure are in place. And then since we do the translation, or our team does in Germany, they have to make sure they have the translators and the JAT readers and the beta readers and anything that they have to deal with on the social side. So we've had to do some of the financial legal stuff that Judith headed up, making sure that we had the legal information correct. And can you speak to that just a little bit, Judith? Related to the legal aspects of Jens and the company, and making sure we had the lawyer answer questions.
So what we did is, because we are working with an individual who is a foreign national, and I think I alluded to this the last time we met, just doing our due diligence, hiring an attorney, a local attorney who is familiar with German law and who actually happens to be barred in New York. So he's familiar with both US law and German law. And so assessing what kind of exposure we had from a tax basis, in the way we were working, is it considered employment or is it a work for hire? And so the basic questions in due diligence that you would do with somebody local, but because in Germany, we don't know the law, we thought that it would be worth the expense. It was surprisingly pricey, but I think well worth the money to make sure that we at least dotted that I and crossed the T in making sure that we were on the right path.
And then the final thing that we came out of that was a discussion whether or not we needed to acquire an account at a German bank because of the way that Amazon pays in the local money. So we have a situation where we get paid for the ebooks in euros, and then it gets translated to American, but then we have to transfer money back to euros. And so we're almost double dipping the conversion issues. We're
addressing those challenges, and as we learn more, we'll come back to the team and provide the information.
That's a really interesting point. I would never have even considered the bank issue. I just wondered whether Ethan might be able to come back on any of those challenges with any thoughts, really.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm responding to Joe. That list is very important. You're really looking for some unique elements that would make you appealing. There's no right or wrong, but having a small pool of potential buyers is not a good thing. But size isn't really always the issue. You're really looking for that one special matchup, that one unique match. And there are times when your book is only suitable for one publisher. And there are times when only a couple of people are going to be responsive to you. I think just naturally people think, oh, if I'm going to go into that market, I need a pool of 20, or else what am I doing? It's going to take that much. And just in general, I don't disagree with that. But considering it's publishing and considering that you might have a niche book, the real issue is, can I find the right person? So out of 3, if one says yes, great. If it's 1 out of 30, what does it really matter? In fact, you've probably done a lot more work. So I think it's really honing the pitch, really figuring out what would make you appealing, how you match up. Can you make the publishing case for your book? Can you say, you've done these books, I see they're successful, you have a relationship with Jane or John Smith, and all those things. You have to really put on your marketing hat and find the right match. I think that's very hard to do. But I think that's really what it is. It's not just the quantity of potential customers, it's what makes a customer uniquely interested in you. Well, it's always going to be a challenge, but that's why, very often, science fiction is a very big area for us. There are countries where there's only one real 800-pound gorilla, and if they pass on a book, that's a real problem. There are countries when there are 2 publishers, so we are sometimes working with very, very small pools of customers, and we are trying to just make that one deal with that one customer. And it's just a reality.
I agree with you there. I guess it's just a question of, it seems that the odds would be better favored with a larger list. But as you say, it only takes one person from that particular region, from that list to sign.
And I think, so if I may, for Dakota, what I would suggest is, why don't you go ahead and draft an introductory email if you want, if it's an email, the cold call that you intend to make, and then perhaps you can, send it to myself and Ethan, since he's an agent, to review, and maybe we can help you with pointers as to how to, come across in the way that you want to, which again is from a point of strength rather than a point of weakness, and highlighting the benefits that you give. The talk that I had when I had 20 books to 50K, I reminded the folks about the WIFM, what's in it for me, right? And so your email wants to make sure that you portray to them what's in it for them to sign you. And so and we can help you draft something if you want.
I'd like to ask Ethan real quick, without hopefully going too far beyond the original question. Ethan, what is your biggest challenge when you could effectively be drinking from a fire hose as an agent? I mean, I'm sure just the people that are watching this could give you 1,000 books a day. How do you decide?
Well, a lot of it is judgment based on experience. So it's what I love, where I think the talent is, what excites me. I'm always making judgment that is isolated from the market. When I go through my unsoliciteds, I pick out who I think has potential from someone who's unpublished, from 1,000 people that are unpublished. So the first thing is my own It's not just taste like, oh, do I like rock or do I like classical music? It's really the fact that I am educated and I'm a lover of the genres. So that's number one. And the second is market intelligence and experience. If someone comes to me and they have sales figures and they have reviews and they have blurbs and they have, you know, a prior audio deal, you know, that enhances their level of interest to me in my own eyes because they have success and because it gives them a platform to sell from. So those are the things that go into it. I think everyone is working with the same things. On one hand, it's the actual substance, talent of the actual storyteller and the story itself. And it's all the things that adhere to that storyteller when they start to have success. But some of my greatest successes were some person who said, hey, my name is Joe, I wrote this book, what do you think? And I don't want to name names, but you know, these are people that are now substantial authors with great followings. But the first contact was me thinking you're a great storyteller.
Thank you.
You know, if anyone is using the telephone, I just want to say that in my experience, that's not going to work. Telephones are often not answered. You're not going to get the right person. I just want to make clear, email, good or bad, is the only way to get to any of these buyers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is what you're kind of saying there is that personal touch is really still one of the biggest pieces. So actually kind of reaching out to them and getting a chance to meet with them so that you can hand over something and say, hey, look what I wrote. What do you think? Right?
Well, any personal contact. Listen, if you could get somebody on the phone, that's great. If let's say you had a friend who knew the publisher of X books in Spain or Italy or Germany, and your friend said, hey, X is willing to give you 5 minutes, get ready for a phone call. Yeah, of course if you make that phone call. But just in the great scheme of things, email is the only thing that people will pay any attention to. The phones are not answered at all, or they're answered by an intern or a secretary, and you're not going to talk to anybody of consequence. And these days, they're going to think you're a nut. So the phone is really not going to help you very much. I think Judith really hit the nail on the head. You know, really write the killer email. I've sold 50,000 books in 3 months, and I see that your company is the largest publisher in France of books about X, Y, and Z, and we are a perfect match. I mean, this is exactly the kind of pitching you want to do, is you are trying to show them that you can fill a need, even a need that, quote, they don't realize they have. And I think, you know, crafting that sales letter, both in voice, in tone, in substance, and in metrics and data, that's what it's all about.
Very glad I asked that question then.
The second question is, where are you in the process? And by the process, I guess the steps we're talking about are logging in and creating your rights guide on Pubmatch, gathering your contacts, actually doing the reach out, doing the follow-ups, having meetings booked for LBF. So Dakota, where are you?
I have the first 9 books in my main series uploaded currently. So we have put together, there's the 2 sheets that you put together. One of them is the sales sheet, and one of them is the, if anyone knows, feel free to jump in. But like, there's one where, yeah, catalog, right. And I'm not quite sure what the difference between those 2 is. We created one and can't seem to find the other on the Pubmatch, but we're not sure where to look. So I'll probably reach out with that at some point. And then right now what we're looking at is we have downloaded, or at least are looking at lists of various publishers that are available on Pubmatch, and we are going through those lists and seeing what they are publishing, if it is fitting with our genre or could fit with our genre, and basically putting down names that we want to start sending these well-crafted emails out to.
I'm listening so intently that I keep forgetting to unmute myself to ask the next question. Joe.
Pretty much the same as Dakota. I've uploaded 3 books to Pubmatch, been compiling the list, as I mentioned before. I've not got to the stage of actually approaching yet, or creating a sales letter, but it's really compiling and getting the list ready. I guess the next step is to actually start reaching out.
Okay, so Judith and Michael, I guess you guys are in a varying states depending on which thing we're talking about, but.
Yes, so actually, but it's a good point. So Pubmatch, we have over 200 books uploaded when we uploaded with the older system, which it was easier to do, quote unquote. So congrats to Dakota and Joe for the fact that, you know, you uploaded your books in the new system. It's a good idea to look at the publishers on Pubmatch. I have not done that ourselves, but what we've done in order to prepare for London is we've registered. So that's good. So we have registered to attend. And then the next step for me is what I usually do then is look at the attendees at London Book Fair to start, you know, pitching to them, sending out requests for invites. But I think looking at the publishers on Pubmatch would be a good idea as well, and say, hey, if you're attending London, you know, would love to meet with you. You know, I think the next step would be maybe to compare the two lists and then say, I see that you're attending London and would love to meet with you, but frankly, I don't know that I don't know me that I'm gonna, you know, that I would put that kind of time into it. So, but that's where we're at in preparation for the book fair.
Sure. Just a quick note from old programmers. I'm sure this is something Michael could do too. Is just having if there were like somewhere that had just these full lists of both things. It should be pretty easy to go through and just say, you know, if in this, check in this, and output the names that are going to be there at the same place. So just something to think about is it could be very easy to narrow down who's actually there.
Did you just give me a job?
Yes.
No, no. I'm just, I was saying like
good
this is
idea.
that, like easily is like it should be something that is easy for you to describe to someone else to do when you
I'm going to
delegate.
describe it to KROUT.
Okay.
I'm a D.
Thank you, Dakota. Actually, yes, because, you know, I don't think in those, I think that'd be perfect. Actually, that would be ideal because, you know, part of the pitch would be, hey, I'm on Pubmatch. Obviously, I'm synthesizing. I'm on Pubmatch. You're on Pubmatch. We'll be in London. Why don't we get together? And this is what I have to offer you, you know? So drafting something like that, I think would be really impactful.
I've only started to get involved with looking at Pubmatch, but I have my one fundamental question. Does Pubmatch include many publishers just in general, or do you must join Pubmatch to be on Pubmatch? That's my question.
My understanding is that you have to join Pubmatch to be on Pubmatch. So it's not like a blanket, you know. So the people that are, the rights buyers that are on Pubmatch are actually interested in looking for items to purchase. That's my understanding based on the conversations we've had with John.
Then maybe I'm of the minority opinion, but you know, again, I think finding the people that most want your book is the most important part of this process. Availability is really secondary, you know, because the problem is the forest has got so many trees in it. There are just so many publishers out there. So to me, the real goal is, irrespective of Pubmatch, irrespective of anything, can you isolate the real buyers and the real people of interest in your genre? And I think that's the most important thing, because looking at a list of interest areas can be like being snowblind. You know, I'm interested in, and they list 20 things. It's very hard to know what they're really doing with those 20 categories. You know, you'll see people say, well, we're interested in New Age and health and spirituality, and what are they really doing? You know, are there really books in there that match up with your book in the field of New Age, spirituality, health, and fitness, whatever? So I still think that, you know, using the large book platforms and really digging into those until you generate the publishers that are doing those things in those countries may be a more sound way to go, certainly at the beginning of the process.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Ethan. So I think that because we had talked about it in previous conversations as part of the due diligence, obviously narrowing it down to the scope that you're targeting is key, right? It's not just, you know, I'm going to spam everybody. So yeah, no. So part of the due diligence, like I mentioned last time with Frankfurt, where it was, you know, 60 pages, you know, of, you know, like 10 whatever companies per page, was literally going in, looking at it, translating from German to English, a lot of it for me, and then and making sure that that publishing company would be a match for us. Because to your point, you know, just sending out an email to somebody who doesn't even match would even put you in a bad light, you know, from somebody who potentially someday could be somebody who's fit, you know. So yeah, I think the due diligence part should be targeting the publishing companies that would be a good fit, where you would be a good fit for them, again, in the with them, and what's in it for them type of situation.
I have nothing. My answer would be, I don't know. Do we have plane tickets?
We do.
Judy?
We
Oh,
do.
excellent.
And hotel.
And hotel. Excellent.
Okay, so what is the biggest lesson you've learned to date? Joe.
The biggest lesson would be, I suppose, with the actual rights, creating a right deal would be just to try and minimize as much as possible what you're giving away. So for Spanish, don't give away just Spain. Just give away Spain. Don't give away all Spanish territories. Minimize to 2 and 3 year term rather than if they offer 5 year term. Just to keep hold as much as possible, I guess. I think that's the biggest lesson.
I'm going to answer it really quickly, just from a producer standpoint, meaning not the company CEO. And that is, from what I've seen Judith do and other things, is for me, it would be focus on making the English what it needs to be and getting those books out there. And then we've had our most success, people finding those books and reaching out to us, from my perspective.
DeKeyser.
For me, it's really more, how do I do this and get past my, independent publisher mindset, right? So for me, I see these things and places are offering, anywhere from 2 to 6% royalties. Just, if you look at their website or sample contracts that you might be able to find somewhere else. And how do I say that's acceptable when I, have been self-publishing, I'm taking 70%. So it's more of a mindset thing for me, of putting myself in the mindset of, this is a place that I cannot normally send my own content. I can't normally get money from there anyway. So anything that I can get potentially is going to be more than I'm doing currently. And so more of a mindset shift for me is kind of where I'm sitting on that.
Judith, did you want to add anything?
It's actually, Dakota and Joe, you guys have hit the nail on the head as far as value, right? And one of the conversations in the presentations that I gave in the conversations, because it wasn't didactic, me speaking, it was actually more Socratic, was the fact that only you can value your product. Obviously there's a market, and obviously there's, parameters, right? That you have to stand, within. You can't ask for $1 billion, right? And, expect it. So in a market that maybe only pays $1 million. But having said that, at the end of the day, one of the things that we're learning through this process is the fact that we need to value our time as well. Of course we want to sell rights, and of course, we want to be successful, but frankly, if it's going to be more of a hassle to get involved with, getting that percentage and dealing with a particular process, I would consider whether it's worth doing it, and then focus your time, the 80-20 rule, right? On where you're really getting your funding. And then as you shore up your base, like I think to Mike's point, as you shore up your English and as you shore up your following, then you can extend. For us right now, we're going very slow because we have a lot of IP, but we're being selective. We're not just going, like I think in an earlier discussion, not just sending a PDF just because somebody asked for a PDF. We're actually doing our due diligence, because what we're looking for is long-term relationships. So we're not looking for somebody who's going to buy our book and leave. We're looking for somebody who's going to come into the family and potentially look into a bigger catalog and see what else they can gather from us. So I think Ethan is probably, amongst all of us, the most expert in that networking aspect of it. But I think it has to be a long-term relationship, because if you're just doing a quick, and in particular, if it's only a low percentage, I don't know, at the end of the day, is it really worth going through the hassle of it? And again, I think it goes down to value. But it is a learning process for us as well. And it's something that we're right now going through and gaining insights into.
I'm going to be really cheeky and throw out a additional bonus question, just because I'm curious, particularly for Ethan and Judith and Michael's opinion, just because they've obviously been in this arena for longer than Joe and Dakota at this point. But I am curious where you think, or how you think, AI translations will affect this market. So obviously the AI translations at the moment are producing very rough first drafts, but they're doing it in seconds, which is obviously lowering the costs of translations as a whole. You obviously need a native editor. You then aren't necessarily able to market in that language, but I'd be really curious for some future gazing thoughts, actually from anybody, on what you think that might do to the market in the next sort of 2 or 3 or 5 years. Ethan, maybe first?
two things I really wanted to say. The first is that you have to budget your time, focus, energy, and money on exactly what makes the most sense for you as a self-publisher. And you have to be really disciplined about this and very careful. I'll just throw out a number. I would say, 5% of your total effort might be put into translation rights for X amount of time. Because yes, it may well be a low value ad, and it's a mistake to go whole hog here. So I would say yes. I mean, the biggest thing I see working with indies, working with hybrids, and working inside my own agency is we have to budget our time and our focus and our finance to the areas that make the most sense. So I would say, yeah, don't go crazy here. It is a mistake, number one. Secondly, for myself as an agent, the value proposition is very different. It speaks more to what Judith is raising. We are long-term institutional presences, at least that's our goal. And we allocate over many, many years and many, many clients. We offer a service that we think is extremely valuable and hard to replicate. So it doesn't matter to some degree how frustrating it might be for one client over multiple years, or 10 clients, or if you don't have to sell in a territory for 5 years in a row. That in some ways is irrelevant, because what we're offering is a suite of professional services allocated over a long amount of time. We want to be an institutional presence. So we don't care that much on a certain crazy level. We know that our top people will earn enough money to support the entire endeavor. We know it's a giant value add as an agent. And we know some of the books will in fact work. Every so often, we will see a book take off in a foreign market, sometimes even bigger than the American market. So it's a really different equation. This is not, it's long-term representation of 50 clients, not a individual self-publisher. So the equation is completely different than what you're talking about. Now, Sasha, speaking to your question directly, yes, as translations come down in cost, that's a great thing, and that will open up some doors. But the countervailing problem is that more and more books will be chasing the same amount of eyeballs to some degree, and we don't know how that's all going to play out. What happens if the German market goes from 60,000 new books a year to 120,000 new books a year? Because AI is generating reams of stuff. Hopefully, the dedicated reader will find some of those, especially in genre, where you have a chance. On the other hand, the competition and the market dislocation is going to be a real thing. And this is something we all face as agents, self-publishers, indies, hybrids, is how do I get the attention to my storyteller, my storytellers, when the market becomes continually crowded with new ventures and new books?
In our, because we travel a lot to the fairs, we're seeing AI take a prominence, which makes sense, right? It's a reality. So the way I look at it is we always strive, and our strategy is always as to where the puck is going to be. And so when we're looking at AI, it's a factor that it's not only here, we're kind of late to the game in a way. It's happening. So how do we incorporate a reality into our processes? And I think, as it develops, it is going to get to a point where it's going to be really a great translation. But you always need a native speaker to look at it, right? To make sure that there's edit. So there will always be an opportunity for native speakers to edit, but translations themselves, I think, are evolving to a point where they're really great quality. Ethan, I think, at the end of the day, the market and the wave is coming. And so it's a matter of how to effectively ride that wave is going to be the key. I always look at Kodak as the example. I always look at it, and whenever I'm thinking about strategy or discussing strategy, when Kodak decided that they were afraid of cannibalizing their film, and so they didn't want to go digital. And so, of course, Fuji came in and took over, right? Because digital was a reality. It wasn't anything that Kodak was going to stop. So for us, it's kind of like, we're not going to stop AI from evolving into the translation world. How do we maximize it is going to be the key. And we're already looking into opportunities to do that ourselves, because at the end of the day, avid readers are everywhere. And, and the eyeballs, maybe we'll get flooded with new content, but in the end, like anything else, that wave is going to come, and the flooding will happen anyway. So we might as well take advantage of it ourselves.
A few things on my side looking to the future. It would mean that the publishing companies and foreign rights is going to do what Judith said. Companies, let's say, such as ours, are going to implement the technology, but we're going to have relationships with people in foreign countries that are the bigger ones. They're going to do the final translations, but more importantly, they're going to be the marketing arm, and they're going to come out of our fans. They're going to be people who are professionals who've been reading for 30 years. And they're going to be implementing these solutions in these larger countries. And then you're going to have the smaller countries where it would not be worthwhile, in this case for LMBPN, to implement something. And so we're going to see that it's creating a new industry already. I'm aware of companies that are implementing in this style, and they're not doing, what's happening isn't that a person is taking 3 months to translate a book anymore. It's taking a part-time person 1 month to do it. And so they're doing it quickly, they're doing it efficiently, they're creating the models. And so what will change in the future, let's say for you, Joe, is you can look at it for the biggest of the languages. It's not going to help on the small languages because the AI engines are just not going to get there anytime soon. And so if you work on the big ones, you might have a fan that knows that language, and you would do something with them to handle any, a website for, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say Joe Crowley German. They're going to handle the discussion and the topics, but you have already used the AI to switch it over to German. They've proved it, everything looks good, it's implemented. You're selling it on the existing infrastructure, but that infrastructure right now is not complete for digital across all nations in the world. Paper is still really relevant. You're not going to get that very easily like you would with the infrastructure we're familiar with right now. And so you have to work with the companies that are in paper for some of the countries for the foreseeable future, 5 or 10 years at least. And that feels like forever.
Yeah, and I think, in the interim, obviously it is a process for AI before it gets to the point where it could replace a human translator, right? I think for the interim, at Frankfurt, I heard the difference between commercial fiction and literary fiction. And I thought, oh, okay, I understand, commercial being the ones that sell and they see it more, they consider it a little bit more pulp. They meaning the industry individuals that were addressing it as commercial. So I can see where AI in the near term will probably take the commercial fiction and be effective at doing it. Now the literary fiction, I think it's still a ways away because obviously the literary fiction has a lot more meaning and a lot of double entendres. And so there's a lot more, for lack of a better word, soul into that writing. And so there I can see where there's still some space for a human translator to come in and do the better job. How long it's going to take, and sorry, just really quick, we went to one of the panels where they actually, an AI wrote a book, a scientific book based on research that normally would take, months and years, and the AI wrote the book in a matter of a couple of months. And so the people who read the book said that it was pretty good, but it was missing soul, So I don't know if it was influenced by the fact that maybe they knew the AI wrote it or not, but I can understand where, there is, in particular with scientific, sometimes findings, but you really have to come in and extrapolate a lot and put some hypotheses in there. And likewise with literary fiction, where AI might not in the near term be able to replace a human yet.
And lots of cussing. Lots of cussing seems to have the same result as literary, where it takes a person to translate that.
Yes. Yes, Mike. So you're safe.
Okay, so that brings us to the last section, really, which is a bit of a Q&A. What do you need from us? Do you have questions to the panel? A chance for you to say,
20 minutes with Ethan's Rolodex?
At a price, right, Ethan? Don't worry, Ethan, I'll represent you here. At a price, anything's open at a price.
Did my wife just agent me? What the heck? This is not right.
No questions. There must be a question.
I think Judith is very right. Literary fiction is not going to be translated anytime soon. I've had conversations with foreign publishers where they tell me, we're going to republish that book, but we don't like the translation. And they will retranslate a book that cost $6,000, $10,000 to translate. I won't name the countries, but they'll say, no, that translation was off. And I think in commercial fiction, and I say that with admiration, and not it is easier. Romance mystery lends itself more easily to what AI can do. And I think you will give yourself a chance in these markets to succeed. Because yes, the base of the pyramid really is avid readers, three books a week readers. And, you know, when the buzz starts, when you start getting, you've got to read this, going from person to person, that is the foundation of the whole business. And it will open up some doors, I think, for sure. And you'll still need some effort in there and maybe some finance in order to get that translation right. But the cost will definitely come down. The access will definitely come down. It will be easier to do. And I think ultimately it is an opportunity, but it's an opportunity that is dicey and is hard to corral and is hard to amateurize over X books, over X years of effort, which is why I've even suggested that 5% of effort. And I really say that until you have more to go on than that. If you're getting emails, want to see your book from my country, that's one thing. But if you're starting with nothing like that and you're cold calling, you will make more money and have more success and feel better about your prospects if you really pour it into writing great books, publishing in the American English market, and taking your Kindle KU book money. I definitely think that's where your efforts belong.
Okay, so any questions?
Sasha, I don't know if this is possible, but I think it'd be handy to have some kind of online walkthrough on the Pubmatch deal creation page or pages. If at all we can arrange that.
Have you watched the video that was sent?
I have.
Okay, and that didn't have. Let me ask John. Okay.
I did watch it, but I'm kind of concerned because we're basically putting figures out for these books, and I don't know 100% that I'm getting it right, basically.
Okay.
But we're making this public.
I will ask the question.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, I feel like most of my questions are addressed or will be addressed, just by either continuing on with this process. Like we, for instance, with the Pubmatch thing, kind of like he was mentioning, something that we found was that one of my questions on the last session was, how do we know who this is for? Like, how do we know if this royalty is what we are being paid, what percentage is this that we are getting? So what we actually had to do is we had to go in and read the contracts like that were generated after we created the thing, so that we could see exactly what it was saying in the terminology of the contract. So Pubmatch again, so perhaps they let us see that a little earlier in the process, or highlight it, maybe something in there. I mean, it is right away in like these blocks, but then just going through, it's not the most super intuitive software in the world, but that's okay. It does what it's supposed to.
So what we might be able to do is, because this software enables screen sharing, so we might be able to, in the next session, I can ask John if he'll do a screen share and then do a walkthrough. Okay, so that will be, I think it's the 18th of December, the next one. So I will ask John and tell Orna we need to reserve a section of the meeting for that.
Yeah, that'd be good, because then we'd have a computer open next to us and do what he's doing at the same time.
Yeah.
Good.
And also these are obviously recorded, and the first one, or possibly the first one or two have already gone up, so that we are preserving this and that we will bundle it together somehow at the end. So it will be then accessible again for all of you guys to have a look and go back and check notes or whatever. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
See you again soon.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Take care.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.